Your Humanities Half Hour is brought to you by the Northern Marianas Humanities Council, navigating the human experience together.
Hapade, Dero, and welcome to Your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry, and today we are chatting with one of our very own Marianas made chefs, Zenn Tomokane. Zenn, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for being here. Could you start us off with a little bit about, maybe a little snapshot about your training and your career and where you are today?
Yeah, my training, my career. First time I landed a job in the restaurant hotel field, I actually was a dishwasher. This was way back when we had the La Fiesta Mall. Do you remember when it had Fiesta 1, 2, and 3 at the time?
Yes, different buildings.
Right, so the very first one.
Okay.
True story. Friday morning, my mom says, hey, after school, come right home. We're going somewhere. So it was typical for her to say that we're going to go somewhere. And, you know, Friday night, maybe we were going to eat at a restaurant. It was a little different this time because I ended up getting dropped off at the restaurant called Salt and Pepper, if you remember that.
I remember there was a Tony Roma's in another restaurant.
So
there.
those were the other buildings. Yeah, this one was the first one.
Okay.
So I follow her. She's chatting with Yoko. That was the restaurant manager's name. And they're good friends, Japanese lady. And we've been there maybe a couple of times, real nice restaurant. But this time around it's different, yeah, because she's chatting with Yoko and we're not sitting down, you know. And they asked me to go talk to Marivic. You might know her, Marivic Dunlop. She was my supervisor at the time. And so, you know, they're showing me around, you know, something around the kitchen. I turn around and my mom's not there. So that was my first job. I was a dishwasher. She just dropped me off to work, and I ended up being shown the ropes how to do a job as a dishwasher. And from that time, there was a couple of months I worked there. I was just turning 16 at the time, so I was just barely 15. I remember it was around the holiday season and my birthday's at the end of the year, so I knew I was turning 16 that year. It was still this one shift where I think that was the first time in my life where you get that light bulb effect, you know, when you have this great idea that you know what you're going to do or do about it. We were so busy, and his name was Chef Nomura. And busy chef, he opens, I know this is funny to say it like this, but true story. He opens the freezer, pulls out a foldable chair, sits down, reads a magazine, pops out a cigarette, and his ashtrays in the freezer cabinet, and he lights a cigarette and he just is just enjoying himself while everyone's catching up to work. Why do I say this story? Is because eventually I asked, you know, I was asking him like, hey, why don't you help us? You know, we're all trying to catch up on our duties and responsibilities. And twice, this guy named Danny, he was on the coat section of the kitchen. He tells me twice, don't bother him, don't say nothing. So I'm eager and persistent. So like, hey, no, call him. We're all busy. Everyone's, you know, we're trying to go home or something like that. And then he just stops what he's doing and he looks at me and he goes, that's the chef. He trained us. He taught us what to do. He wrote the menu. And, you know, the reason why we're here is because he did all of this. He created the menu. Well, you know, he keeps on. So nobody can tell him what to do. I'll tell you, Kat, the first light bulb in my life just was so bright on top of my head. He goes, nobody can tell him what to do. This guy has all this power and all of that. I'm going to be a chef in the future. And I go, so if I knew only better. But so that was the first time it happened. Fast forward, I worked at Coco Restaurant during my high school days. You know, I kept all my summer jobs there at the steakhouse. And the old man, I believe he's already passed away, Hirosawa. he looks at me when I'm a waiter, and every night and every lunch shift, I'm in the kitchen learning how to cut the steak for them to grill on the charcoal. And one night he pulls me out. It was a slow night. I remember it clearly. It was a weekend. It was slow. He pulls me out and he goes, tomorrow, you go to the Hyatt, and then you apply there. I go, apply for what? He go, you apply for kitchen. You like to work in the kitchen. You go work at the Hyatt. Don't work anywhere else. Just work Hyatt. It's an international company, so this is really, old Japanese guy, businessman telling me to do that. So, sure. He go, yeah, only here. Good company. Sure enough, I applied, and I ended up getting a somewhat intern job. They were not hiring at the moment, but I spoke about, I tell this to friends and those who haven't known them. So I turned in my application on a Monday. This was the following Monday. I'm asked to wait for them to call back, or I can follow up anytime. So Tuesday I come back and I walk in the HR office and I follow up my application, and they're like, oh, can we help you? And I say, yes, I'm following up my application because when did you turn it in? I go, oh, that was yesterday. So they're like, oh, okay. Well, I don't think we got to it, but we'll get back to it. Just just call us back, or we'll call you. I go, okay. Guess what I did on Wednesday?
You showed up.
I went back, and guess what I did on Thursday? I went back, and then guess what I did on Friday? So Coco restaurants in Garapan, and there's split shift, there's lunch and dinner shift. So I did that every day after lunch shift. I would walk over to the Hyatt. It's about 5-minute walk, less 3-minute walk. By Friday morning, the HR director, I hear her, she hears me coming in, and she hears the conversation going on. So it's a familiar conversation at a familiar time. And I can hear her say, is that boy? And they're like, yes, he's here. So she comes up. She's like, you know that we told you we'll call you back. And I said, yes, and you also said that I could follow up anytime. So I think that's how my hotel career started. So I just keep following up. And then I got the chance to speak to Chef David Jones. I have to say a little bit more than just that was Chef David Jones, because he interviewed me. He just recently passed, so he was my first executive chef, and he's the first local chef actually here in the cinema. He was the reason why I said I wish I could work in an international company, because I saw that he did it. Do you know Chef David Jones?
Yes.
Yes. My interview with him he was very direct, and he was very respectful at the same time. And one of the questions he asked me was, do you want to sit in my chair? Do you want to be the executive chef? And for a good second, I was like, is this guy challenging me, or is he trying to test me? But I just answered it with genuine intent. I said, yes, I would. The reason why I'm applying is because maybe in the future, I would like to be the executive chef. And I think after that, there wasn't much asked or said, and we got up, and I got a call the following week. Ended up finding out that there was no positions for hire, but they put me in a training position. So I worked around 3 months in the hot kitchen doing the live station, and then kind of complained like, why am I barbecuing every night? I do this at home, So I made that kind of comment, and then they end up putting me in the pastry kitchen for 10 months. So then I end up learning under a French-Australian chef. Was he French-Australian? Chef Jacques. And so I was in pastry kitchen for 10 months. Then I moved to front office for 2.5 years or 3 years. So I did that. Fast forward, I get up to a manager position with just my high school diploma, right? And it was a time when Chef Colombo was the executive chef, and I was assisting him to run the kitchens in operations. I was the chef de cuisine for the Giovanni's Italian restaurant, and at the same time the teppanyaki restaurant. So the position comes up for the executive sous chef, and I try to apply. I go through the process, and I was told I wasn't qualified because I did not. I don't have any certification or whatnot in culinary, and I understood it, and I said, okay, fair enough. less than a year, I made a plan. 10 months before I left in 2012, this was June 2012, it was October the year before, I let them know, says, oh, I'm leaving next summer. They said, where are you leaving to? Go, I'm going to the mainland. They said, for what? I said, I'm going to go get me my culinary certificate. So I did that, and I left in June 2012. Eventually got my culinary certificate in 2014, and moved back 2015 to work with the Hyatt. They hired me back as the executive sous chef. And since I came back, it was typhoon, what did we have? Solar first, and then U2, and then the pandemic. What a joyride was it, And then Hyatt started having its gloomy days, with the closing. It was evident that there was a hard time for their part, and Crown Plaza was coming into the CNMI, Saipan. So that was conversation started 2019, when did I move? 2021, 2022 I moved to the former Fiesta Hotel that became Crown Plaza Resort Saipan. And part of my culinary journey was to work for a opening team. And how blessed could I be to do that while still being on home ground, still being home and able to do that. So I get to that point where I'm hitting these marks in my career in that journey. And today's marks the 10th year being an executive sous chef, working for 2 international hotel brands. And this summer, I'm planning to go pursue more challenges, because I'm still asking myself, what am I not doing, or what can I do more to become the executive chef? That's my goal. Now I'm going to get to this part where, all of this being said, there's 2 things that, 2 factors in. One was why I pushed this hard, and then the other one is another reason that comes along is I grew a family while doing all of this. So this is when I believe I was not even a supervisor in the kitchen yet, that I got married and had a kid real young. I think I was 21 or 22 when I had my first son. My second son later on, 4 years later. So that gave me a reason to be like, okay, I gotta really, up the ante and provide more for the family. But I've always said that my goal was to become an executive chef for New York City 5-star hotel. Like, that was a sentence, and that was the goal. That was like shooting for the stars, and you try as high as you can go. If you get real high, and you fall back, and I would tell these to kids, I was like, you shoot up as far as you can go, as high as you can go. And even if you don't reach the stars, just remember, when you fall back, you're going to fall on the clouds. So something like that. So I kind of told myself that way back, way early in my career, that I'm going to try to become an executive chef for a 5-star hotel in New York City. That was like the big dream, And here I am today, still chasing that dream.
You have said that one of your biggest early influences was your grandma when it came to knowing food or being inspired by food. Can you tell us about her and your experience with her?
Yeah, my grandma, she's still alive, Luisa Ariola Borja Cutegua. She's a great homemaker. I still haven't perfected her pastit, the papaya turnover, but she did teach me her recipe for the lentizas.
What's missing in your pastit?
So I haven't done it.
What do you still need to perfect to reach grandma's level?
I think accepting simplicity. You just gotta accept simplicity, and a lot of Chamorro pastries still use Crisco. I just don't use Crisco that often, so I have to accept that probably need to go and use the original recipe. You get what I'm saying, Kat? Like,
Okay.
like, it's like I try to use butter, I try to use all of that, but I owe it to the simple recipe and how we actually did it, because I think I could demolish 3 or 4 large post-its when I was a little kid. Grandma had a great influence on my weight gain when I was younger. So, so she was a great homemaker. She was very keen to making sure that specific ingredients. She knew what ingredients. Like if she said this brand of sugar, like you couldn't give her the next best brand of sugar. Like she said, no, it has to be like this. It has to be like this. You have to use this. There's this one coffee cup that it had to be this coffee cup for her measurement. Like, right, right. And she said, no, it's my hand. Like I said, Grandma, when I started learning more, working in the hotels and whatnot, right? I said, Grandma, what measuring cup do you? She goes, no. You only open the cornstarch box and you use that one, and then you measure the flour and you just use the cornstarch box. So can you imagine if was the Argo brand cornstarch stops making that box? Like we're not gonna know. But you can always take the box and measure out, right?
Yeah.
So she had her way of doing things, and I learned that if you have something good already, you don't change it, right? And her recipes become timeless. And she was more of the sweets, the bakery side with my late aunt Nanoring as well. It was my grandfather, who I later found out, my late grandfather Tungoro, that was known to a lot of my distant relatives and people who I met later on in life, that they knew my grandfather as like a chamorro chef, being that his food was popular and the way he prepared it. And then thinking back, when I do think back into my grandfather's kitchen, he had a really an arsenal of ingredients, in his outside kitchen. Like he would use Italian seasoning for his red rice recipe, like, right,
That's
like,
interesting.
yeah, like if you just buy Italian seasoning, and when you cook your red rice, just like you do at home, just use Italian seasoning, and you would know my grandfather's how he made his red rice to be aromatic in a sense. He was a really good butcher. We raised pigs, goats, ducks, chickens, and from his teachings to my uncles during the weekends or during fiestas and parties, we farmed and butchered our own meat. So that's a skill I learned at a really young age, how to butcher meat, like from livestock to really cooking it. You work nowadays, that's a life skill. If you know how to butcher meat, you got to be taught that, and it takes years of practice to do that. So I'm very, very, very thankful for growing up in a farm environment too. Yeah. So Grandma always said, keep to what's working, don't ever change it. And Grandpa always was the one where passing on of knowledge was important. That's how I grew up with the farm life.
Took the time to teach you how to do things, like
He
mentioned.
He corrected with discipline, but with love at the same time. So you can't learn something genuinely if you're corrected and not knowing what's the right one. I mean, you can always tell someone they're wrong, but if the way he corrected us was, he explained, he goes, if you cut it this way, the meat won't get tender. Or if you marinate it too long, even the way we froze meat in the deep freezer, he would teach us never stack the meat more than 3 inches, because the meat won't ever get solid frozen and you'll end up having rancid meat. So he taught us even how to store meat in the deep freeze so that we won't lose it. And then he said, no, you got to cut it this way, you got to pack it this way, you got to stack it this way in the freezer. So we even learned to do that in the farm when we had the big deep chest freezer. So those are not institutional knowledge. That's passed on knowledge that wherever he learned that from. But it worked, because instead of having round bags of meat put into the freezer when we were after we butchered it, he taught us how to press it so that it would freeze. And then he wouldn't want us to butcher the other meat until that became solid frozen. Then we would put it again. Because
very precise.
Yeah, And it makes sense because if you had meat that was this big, the center would not get frozen in time, and then you end up with rancid meat when you thaw it out or something like that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
We're chatting today with the executive sous chef Zenn Tomokane, and we'll be back after this break.
Looking for resources about Marianas history, culture, and more? Well, check out the Northern Marianas Humanities Council's collection. Our extensive video, audio, and photographic library can be found on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at 670 Humanities. Or check out the written resources on our website at nmhcouncil.org. And for those who prefer a good book, we also have a selection of local publications for purchase. So, dive in, explore, and share your comments as we navigate the human experience together.
Welcome back. Zenn, okay, I was at one of your restaurants recently, and I was thrilled to see saibok on the being offered, which is plantain or banana, cooking banana. Help me
Yes.
out here. Talk to us about local food being introduced more in more restaurants, for example, your restaurant, and also fusion. What has been your experience with our traditional local foods in a mainstream restaurant, the mainstream international brand restaurants that you've worked in?
So currently the restaurant you're talking about is the Terrace Restaurant at Crown Plaza.
Yes.
And we have introduced in a way local food and local inspired ingredients into what you're calling the mainstream or putting it out there on an international buffet, right? The way I feel about all of this is I'm fortunate to have young chefs with creative ideas, you know, come out and say and ask, oh, saibok dish, how do you do that? And I believe my job and what I teach them is this is the right way to do saibok. This is the approach. This is your cooking method. You don't do this, you don't do that, you do this. And they get it, you know, they adopt it fairly quickly. Then the next challenge is I ask them, what do you want to do with it? After showing them what's the foundation, what's the base of it. You know, saibok is it's a starch part where you do plantains or breadfruit or sweet potatoes or whatnot. It's basically steaming it with coconut milk, a pinch of salt, and then anything after that is whatever you feel like. I'm gonna pull out this one recipe that, and you can also like thicken it, you know, with like starch or whatnot to give it that sauce. So Chef Rex, he's not even Chamorro, right? He's a Saipan born, is it? Yeah, I think he's Saipan born, Filipino chef. And he has this really like genuinely bright character about him. One day, because I always tell them, you know, we eat with our eyes, we eat with our nose before we eat with our mouth, you know, all of that, we eat with sound. I'm always saying this, you know, chefs, we eat with our eyes first, we eat with our ears, you know, and I say this, and then he says, okay, I'm gonna put a garnish on it. And I say, okay, sure. So by chance and by also, I think there was a misdelivery or over delivery. We had so much blueberries one day in the kitchen, and blueberries are not cheap, you know, especially
They are not.
So one day he goes, Chef, I'm gonna throw some blueberries on the saibok. I go, man, if that makes you feel good, it looks good already to me or whatnot. So he does it. The simple thing of taking a fruit, like such as blueberries, which they don't grow here because we have too much of it, and he just threw fresh blueberries on top of the lemmai saibok, right? And so where does that come from? It stems off when we make, for example, a pilaf dish or any other dish, and we garnish it with like fruit, you know, for Indian rice or somewhat, like put raisins on it. So you take that approach and you put it onto the local foods. And I'm telling you, Kat, right now, I think if I'm gonna have, if I had a little bit of more change, you know, to buy blueberries while making saibok, maybe do that. But that kind of fusion, it's just because we're introducing a new way to enjoy the foods that we have. one of the dishes that I came up with and created was taking faja, which is the endosperm of the coconut when it's maturing, the spongy
Inside, yeah.
right? You
yeah.
know, faja is, right?
Yes.
So because Saipan, we don't have like cultured mushrooms, right?
Yes.
So grew up eating faja always as like a snack. It was always the weekend snack or the farm snack when we didn't have anything to eat. We just opened the coconut that had yay many leaves or whatnot.
Maturing, yeah.
Right? So it had to, I always said the perfect faja is like when you have like 3 sets of leaves and it's about, the leaves are no more than, so that has the perfect faja. Yeah, we do that. But I'll share this with you. So if you get your hands on faja, just treat it. It's free, basically free, right?
Like a mushroom? Is this where you're
Bing,
going?
you got it, yeah.
Because mushrooms absorb, correct me if I'm wrong, mushrooms really absorb whatever you put them in.
Kind of, yeah.
And faja being
Spongy,
spongy,
yep.
it's kind of the same.
Yeah, and I always thought, you know, it's free. Like going to the store and having some experience in Japan, you know, in the US and wherever, we're buying imported stuff, you know, like earlier I just talked about blueberries, like $13 for this. I mean, it's kind of expensive, right? So I came up with faja, and I said, okay, well, we got to do is take faja, cut it just like you would do mushroom, right? And you should try this. So just garlic, onion, and we should grow our own garlic and onion here. And you just saute it with some olive oil or whatnot. And then the faja has that yellowish shell on the outside. And as you're sauteing, that actually has a lot of the coconut oil in it.
Oh.
So you get the coconut oil essence when you're sauteing the faja.
Okay.
And you can do it over high heat. So right, it becomes smoky or whatnot, you know. And you can flavor it anyway. You can add extra vegetables to it. You can add it to a chop suey dish if you wanted to. You can actually cut it up cold and put it into a fruit salad. So faja is a very good ingredient and it's free. You know, you can do that. It's a snack growing up.
It was.
And you can enjoy that actually with having a somewhat mushroom dish in your kitchen. Fusion, people have to understand this, or chefs. I make a joke in the kitchen. I look at a dish and we have this joke. Is this a fusion dish or a confusion dish? Because you can be creative to a point where it just doesn't do justice, right?
What is the key to have a good fusion dish?
Balance. So balance, you know, balance with saltiness, sweet, sour, bitterness. If you have that in your dish, everything's got a balance, and you got to learn how to taste food with, you know, what's in the front, what's in the middle, and what's in the back. Do you understand what
I kind of, the back is like what you taste at the end.
Yes.
Almost like the aftertaste.
Yes. So when we're preparing a dish, especially like sauces to pair with a kind of meat, we taste the sauce. I'll teach you one thing that I always teach the
yes, please.
kitchen.
Teach me
So about
'cause I need help.
salad dressings. I'll go back to the hot kitchen, but in the cold kitchen, whenever they prepare, like we're going through a recipe, and they're like, Chef, I made the Caesar salad dressing. I said, did you follow the recipe? Yes. Okay. Is it balanced? They're like, okay. So they take a clean spoon and they taste it, and I say, chefs, whenever you're going to taste salad dressing, okay, and you taste it with a spoon, you're not really tasting the salad dressing. And they look at me like confused, like, but chef, this is the salad dressing. I go, okay, if you're gonna make Caesar dressing, you taste it with romaine lettuce.
That makes sense.
Because the water content, the bitterness from the romaine heart and everything, that's gonna tell you if your dressing is salty enough or not salty enough. And so, okay, so those are the small things into refining a recipe, is you taste it with what you're actually going to have it with, rather than just itself, because then it could taste fine, except it's a little bit salty. Yet if you put it onto lettuce leaves, it's going to dilute. So that's just something. Then fusion, chamorro food, you asked me about that.
Can I ask you it in this way about how we can make our local food not only more interesting through fusion, but healthier? Because you've said that's also something that you're interested in
Yes.
trying to promote.
Our food on the islands is very rich, and I think you can find that in most island nations. It's because we preserve meat. We tend to have, whether it's true or not, people say that having a diet with a lot of coconut milk can be somewhat on the unhealthy side, or however they look at it. Well, I have my own way of looking at that. But what we can do is be more open-minded about what we have around us with the greens, you know. Growing up on Saipan, the closest thing we would have for a healthy vegetable dish would be just the American style salad bar, you know. There is the taro leaves that's dried and then cooked with coconut milk, and then you put in like either sardines or smoked pork in it or something, but it still becomes heavy and rich. And then there's sukiyaki, which has vegetables in it, but it still has, again, pork, shrimp.
Soy sauce.
Yeah, it tends to be stronger in salt. In the hotel, we've introduced for the banquet menus where you have the vegetable sukiyaki, where we don't put any meat or seafood in it. So we can have a noodle / vegetable dish, which it's incorporating more vegetables into the dish. A simple dish like, let's say, for example, the red rice. Growing up, there was always bacon in it, or some kind of meat, or clams. My grandfather used to put clams in there. I instead, for texture and for health reasons, I've come up with cooking red rice with okra. I like okra, maybe growing up with some Japanese influence. I don't mind steaming it and then eating okra with a bit of soy sauce, you know, light soy sauce and wasabi or whatever. But if you take okra, which many people don't like, and you just cut it up and you add that into red rice, you can have some kind of like a vegetable into your diet. It has a good fiber in it, and it takes away the slimy texture that okra has. But then it also makes the rice better texture. If like the sliminess goes in, it works out. It just,
Yeah.
right. So we can do more in our local foods by reducing the salt, incorporating more vegetables, and being open to other dishes, other cuisines in the world, and adopting that, like how we adopted. I mean, there's so many dishes that
We have adopted so many dishes.
Yes.
Spanish, Japanese.
Yes. So we need to
American.
do that. The one vegetable dish that somewhat eats all over the stores and everyone learns how to cook it. It's a Filipino dish. It's called pinakbit. It's everywhere. Like that's what even the farmers here on Saipan grow. Most of the farmers here, whether they're local or Bangladeshi, Chinese, or Filipino farmers, everyone grows long beans, eggplants, pumpkin, and bitter melon. Like, you know, it's like those are the main staple ingredients to making that dish.
Oh, okay.
So, it's one of my favorite dishes. It's vegetable dishes. It's from the Philippines because it's like a steamed stir-fried combination of bitter melon and eggplant, string beans when it's sweet and it's
It
in
sounds
season.
so healthy.
When you
I
can
need
make
a
it healthy,
I need a little bit of soy sauce.
you,
on it.
you can make it healthy, and then you can add in
garlic.
yeah. So yeah, our local foods, like the simplicity, bring back the traditional just barbecued fish,
Yeah.
right? Do you really need that finadeni on the side with that soy sauce? That do you really need it?
Maybe some lemon will do.
Yeah, lemon and sea salt maybe. I know we love making our cocoa, which is so tasty in my mouth already. I'm thinking about cocoa at the moment.
Pickled mango or cucumber.
Yeah, and it's not telling
Papaya.
it's not saying that our food is bad. It's maybe we just need to balance it out and have the kids nowadays understand options. You know, health options like, do you have to have that? Could you try having less sugar and salt? So our generation is responsible to making sure that generations to come are given the opportunity to choose for themselves, to eat better, eat
Have
healthier.
better options
Yeah,
to choose
yeah. Because we can't say do this, but if the option's not there, then they wouldn't be able to make it.
I think our chat today has been a bit of a buffet. There were a lot of things that we had to choose from to talk about, and we were only able to eat or sample so much.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you for sharing today. I want to wish you the best on the new adventure for you and your family moving to the States.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, that will be coming up soon.
Any final thoughts before we go?
Well, I thank you for having me, and
My pleasure.
hearing the journey I've had and what I think about certain things. Last thing I wanted to say was, for those who want to pursue anything in your life and make your dreams happen, go, reach high, reach really high, Don't stop yourself from trying to reach as far as you can go and high as you can go. And along the way, have fun. And just try your best to teach others, what works, what do you think will be helping them, and just make a better Marianas at the end of the day. Yeah.
Well, thank you for being the inspiration you are and for sharing stories today.
I'm glad I'm here today, and thank you to those who made me who I am today too.
Our guest today has been Executive Sous Chef Zenn Tomokane, sharing just a little bit about his journey and his experience. This has been Your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry.
Your Humanities Half Hour has been made possible in part by a major grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Democracy demands wisdom. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this program do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities. For more information or to share your thoughts, contact the Northern Marianas Humanities Council at nmhcouncil.org or on social media at 670 Humanities. That's 670 Humanities.